So here's how to make a multi-layered portrait. So the first thing you need to do, it's quite similar to the GIF file animation if you've done that already. You just need to go up to File and Script and load files into Stack. So before you do that, you need to have all your files ready to go in a folder, preferably on the desktop. So edit them how you want them all and maybe put them in order, and then go to File, Script and load files into Stack. Then hit on Browse. So I've got this folder here. It's the same files that I used for the GIF. That's why they're called GIF, but I'm just going to use the same files just for this demonstration. So if you highlight the first one, hold down Shift, click the last one, it will select all the images, click Open, and then you have to just click OK. So rather than opening them all as individual files, by doing that process through scripts, it'll open each of the images as a separate layer in the same file. So one thing I want to point out here that's quite a handy little tip is this little eye icon. If the eye is on, it means you can see the layer. If you then click the eye, it will turn that layer off, and all you'll be able to see is the layer underneath. So that's quite a handy tip, so you can turn things on and off that are along here. So what we're going to do first is turn off all of the layers other than the first two, and then you can work your way up from the bottom. So we've got these two layers here. If I turn this on and off, you can see the bottom layer, now the top layer, bottom, top. So all we're going to play around with is the opacity. So you can either click the little drop down menu there next to 100% and move the slider up and down, or you can hover over opacity, click and just slide it left and right. That's a quick way of doing it. So as you can see, by doing that, you're starting to see the layer underneath. So that's one way of doing things. Now if we move up to the next layer here, the third layer up, select that layer, turn that layer on. Now all we can see is this third layer because the opacity is at 100, and this is what they call a layer style. So by default it's set on normal, but if you play around with these, they all do slightly different things to the way the layer interacts with the layer below it. So let's just hit darken. So as you can see the layers below and the layer that you are currently selected on. If you run through a couple of those, you can see it does slightly different effects to each one. So that just play around and see which one fits best, and then just work your way up. Each time you click the eye icon there, all you'll see is that layer because you haven't changed the opacity and you haven't changed the blending mode there. So just play around each time with those, and I'll just quickly go through and change each time and then show you how to save it. So that's quite an aggressive one. I'll just change the opacity on this one. Just change the opacity on that one. Then on this one I might try pin light, see what happens there. That's quite cool. And then finally I might do difference. Oh, that's a bit too over the top. Exclusion. Linear light. That's quite nice. Maybe take the opacity down as well on that. There you go. And now you can see all of the layers are visible in some way because you've got them all ticked on with the eye. but you can see all the layers here on the main image. Now, there's two options here. You can either File, Save As, and save it as a Photoshop file here. So as long as the format says Photoshop, it will save it as a PSD file, and then it will save all of these layers, and you can go back and change it. If you want to come back and have a go at some other ones, I'd suggest saving it as a PSD. If you're completely happy with it and you want to save it just as it is for printing, I'd go to Layer, go to Flatten Image, and if you look on the right hand side as I click Flatten Image, it will just make one picture out of all of those layers. And if we go a step back, so I'll do that again, step backwards. So if we look here, it's 85.1 megabytes at the moment. If I flatten it, Layer, Flatten Image, that goes down to 10.6. So you'll save a lot of room on your hard drive, pen drive, and when you send it to print, it'll be a lot quicker. So then you can just File, Save As. There's no need to save it as a PSD now because there's no information. Just go ahead, save it as a JPEG, and make sure you slide the slider along to maximum. Hit OK, and there we are, file saved.